Hey everyone, welcome back to K-Korner, the channel where we dive into the wild world of entitled people and their unbelievable stories. Hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, let's go. Many years ago, I was living in a beautiful, sunny southern state. I had a cute little house that was completely fenced in, 5 fence in front, 8 fence on the sides, and a 10 chain link fence in the back. I'm fortunate enough to work from home. My office was my patio, unless it was raining. My dog, Sari, German Shepherd Rottweiler mix, kept me company. At a year old, she was a big girl at 120 obs. She was generally very sweet and kind but protective. She was well trained but also had a knack for disappearing to play with her animal friends, so I kept her on a chain too if we were outside. High school kids in the area had the tendency to use the alleyway behind my house to get to house from school. Most would stop and say hi to Sari and give her attention. She loved it. I honestly didn't mind. One day, I noticed that any time Sari was alone outside, some kids would rattle the back fence, throw things at it, then scream and yell at Sari. The kids would run off before I could see who they were. In case things got worse, I bought some security cameras and brought Sari with me anytime I went inside when the kids would be around. One day I had to grab some work in the house and left Sari outside. Just for a moment. From inside, I heard the fence rattle and then Sari yelp in pain. I rushed outside just in time to see a kid try to throw a rock at Sari, along with some other kids. I was pissed. As I rushed over to Sari, I calmly asked them, "Did it ever occur to you to wonder why I keep my dog chained in a fenced yard?" Then I unhooked her. Sari ran at my back fence and climbed over it. The kids started running down the alley with Sari right behind them, barking away. I let her go about 1-2 block, then whistled for her. She came trotting back, all happy as can be. I checked her over and gave her a treat. She was fine. A couple of hours later, one of the kids came back with his mother, EP. EP screaming, "You witch! You had your dog attack my son!" He was only having a fun time. "He's just a boy. The kid was at least 16, yo."
You scared him. It was just a joke. You had no right to do that. I'm calling the police and having that dog shot.
Blah, blah, blah. I literally couldn't get a word in. Then she starts threatening me, so I called the police. The operator could hear her plain as day, even though EP was at least 40 feet from me. The police showed up in about 5 minutes. 2 cars. I guess they were in the area. 4 officers. All very nice guys. 2 officers come talk to me, the other 2 talk to EP and her son. EP never stopped screaming and cussing. I explained what happened and showed the video to the officers. Show all of Sari's vet and training paperwork. I filed a report, asked to press charges. The officers are petting Sari all the while because she's demanding attention from her new friends. She has her happy face on. Yes, Sari actually smiles. The 3 of us and Sari, on a leash, go outside towards the other group. We're about 10 feet from them when Sari suddenly cuts in front of me to stop me and starts growling. The skin around her face went tight, making it look like a hair-covered skull. The hair on her back raises up. Sari is very scary when she's like that. EP screaming, "See, that witch raised that dog to attack black people. Racist witch. That dog needs to be put down." The 2 officers that were with me were African American. So, no. That part always annoys me, so I included it. I called back one of the officers that I'd been talking to. He didn't want to come too close as Sari is showing large teeth. So I moved back towards my house. As quietly as I could, I told the officer that either EP or kid were carrying a gun. That's why Sari started getting protective. It had happened several times before. I guess to be on the side of caution, or to shut me up, he decided to search the EP and kid. EP had an unregistered gun. Kid had a 6 switchblade, not legal in that state. So, in addition to a charge of animal cruelty, they got nailed for carrying a concealed weapon, being in possession of a firearm while on probation, resisting arrest, and a couple of other charges. EP never stopped screaming the entire time this happened and while being driven away. I don't think that's how EP or kid expected to end the day, but I enjoyed it. Even better, I never saw her or her kid again, and kid stopped harassing Sari. Hello, this might be a bit lengthy because it takes place over the course of years. EM, entitled Mom ED, entitled Dad EB, entitled Brother and B. Brother, not entitled. I'm 20 MTF as of this current moment that I'm writing this. This all started at 11. This is when I kind of started to form my own identity up to this point. For the most part, I followed everything my parents asked of me down to a fine point. They're very religious and strict, getting worse over the years. During this time of identity forming, I encountered the furry fandom, a group I proudly stand with today. I took some time getting to know my new friends and also started learning more about myself. For about 4 months, everything was fine then. My EM did her routine check of devices. Every once in a while, she'd take me and B's phones or tablets and search through them. My mistake was not knowing sooner that my parents were closed-minded folks. They searched my tablet and found an app called Amino. Now Amino during this time was a good app for communities, and I was in the furry Amino. There was no NSFW because it broke the rules. When they found it, they were enraged and said that Satan was trying to get to me through Furries My Ed. Searched my room and gathered my first furry drawings and threw them in the trash. The tablet was taken away, and I wouldn't see my friends for another 6 months. Some remembered me, some forgot me. During the event of first discovering I was a furry, my EAPs decided to spank me to try and teach me a lesson that furries were ungodly and satanic, as well as predators. Over time, I began to become more secretive in being able to make a mask and make myself seem happy to my EPs for the next 5 years. It was rinse repeat. Parents find out new thing, they hate new thing, they punish me for not following the ways of their God, one time getting beat with a prop oar. Yes, the one you paddle a canoe with. Around this time, I questioned my gender. I stopped talking with others for some time for some self-finding stuff. I had always leaned more feminine since before I was properly sentient and constantly every few weeks wish I were born a female as well as being pansexual, panromantic. I found a gender-fluid partner in the youth group of the church I was made to go to, who was also a furry. We both didn't agree with the church or its beliefs, but our families made us go even when we didn't want to. Now, to be fair, I was in my mid-teens at this point, and as teens do, we got a little rowdy over text. Now my EPs had access to chat logs for my phone. They saw I was being this way with my partner, also learning of them being a furry and me being pan. They didn't realize I was trans yet. They forced us apart and demanded to the youth leaders that we stayed separated, as well as using my phone to text my partner saying, "I found Jesus and no longer want anything to do with you or furries." They did this to my Discord friends and family too, causing my friends to become fearful of my account. I lost so much that day I was shattered in more ways than one due to the buildup of trauma and the mask I had to wear. I developed DID. I had disassociated enough to where my protector emerged, who bore the weight of the mask while I dealt with everything else. 2 more years of hell, and I decided since I was 18 I'd go to my first furry convention, Anthrone Northwest. I had a fursuit ordered. I was so excited. I took a bus to the city it was in. I was so happy everything was going well. Until the 6th hour, as I was getting ready for bed, I see an email from my parents. I had told them I was hanging out with a friend for the weekend. They knew I was at the convention, and they told me if I didn't leave outside and go to them, they would have the police pull me out and being afraid I left. On the way home, I was extremely out of it. Up to this point, I had several panic attacks from the abuse my EPs inflicted on me, and that night was the worst one. They threw my phone into traffic, making me lose everything important to me: emails, texts, Discord accounts. I had lost it all, and the day that followed was worse. In the morning, I found my fursuit torn to shreds and drowned in bleed. I saved a singular paw, though. That same day, they beat me and tried to cast a demon out of me. I was atheist at this point, as well as forcing me to read the Bible for the whole day and the days after going back to work. On Tuesday was terrible. My coworkers saw me in my worst state. My EPs got me fired that same month by withholding my work phone, as it's against policy not to have it with you at work. My EPs claimed that God wanted me to lose my job to focus on Him and get back on the right path so I would turn from sin. They did this for status in the church, having me make lessons for the youth and use me as a popularity puppet. Now then, this year's hopefully final encounter with them. Since that incident, I had kept my secrets closer than ever. I got a new job, so I got bold one day and bought a new phone and phone line. I was 19 at the time. They get a bill in the mail addressed to me from Verizon. They had found out about the phone. And that night, my EM storms into the back rooms of the store to force me to get my phone from my locker. I was so scared I blanked out, letting my protector have control for some time. One of my closest friends and coworkers saw what was happening and got a manager who kicked out my EM from the store after telling my EM that I was not coming home again. My mask fell and I broke into tears. My plan to move out came too early. I was homeless and terrified to my core. A few weeks later, I'm renting from a friend, basically being their roommate. My parents try to get into contact and even follow me home a few times, thinking I wouldn't notice them in their email. They said that I was their son, that they raised for 20 years, so I should listen to every word they say, and that I'm indebted to them for adopting me from my abusive bio. I didn't know her or remember her. I ended up blocking their numbers today since I was tired of it. They had withheld my ID over the past 3 months, and I was tired of them being shit, so I went no contact. For context, last summer I had the unfortunate pleasure of dealing with a Karen who thinks a person washing their car at home also runs a car wash. Karen complained to the lodge owner who she was staying with to probably stir up trouble or something. Anyway, the lodge owner, who I'll call D, talked to me about it, and he had an idea. He had a slight business opportunity, and he wanted to pitch it to me. He wanted to see if I wanted to make some money washing any lodgers' cars for them to offer something no one else in town had. So we talked for a couple weeks, and we came up with a plan. Days I have the afternoons off, and weekends I can offer the lodgers a car wash, and if needed, I could clean their interiors too. Dee and I agreed if the lodgers want their interiors cleaned, they need to first schedule an appointment with me and Dee, so it works best for everybody. And so far, everything has been going good. People get their vehicles washed, and I get some extra cash for fun stuff. That is, until what happened last week when the entitled lodger had to make their grand appearance. It was a normal Thursday afternoon. I just finished washing a lodger's car and wrapping up the waxing. Even though it's February, we wrapped up on having snow this year, and having a heated garage has its perks. I brought the car back to the lodge for the customer and let them check out their ride. They say thanks and pay, and I go talk to Dee. When I walk in the lodge, I hear shouting and see Dee arguing with a lady whose face actually looks like it's from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, who called Karen about how, if she needs her car cleaned inside and out, she needs to schedule an appointment first. The convo goes like this. Dee, I'm sorry, Karen, our guy needs you to make an appointment first so he can have everything ready. Karen, well, what the hell kind of service is that? It should be, he can do it now, when I'm ready, not when he feels like it. Dee, again, sorry, but our guy already has people lined up. That's why he does appointments. Also, he has another job, so he doesn't have a lot of spare time. Karen, well, what the hell is wrong with him? Honestly, I came here to enjoy the scenery, and this is what I get, honestly. After what seemed like eternity to Dee, he saw me with the payment and asked me, Hey, OP, you finished already? Me, yeah, it wasn't too bad, but the guys are happy to hear your part. I hand him his share. Dee, thanks, OP. Say, do you have any openings this weekend for a full cleaning? Me, sorry, I'm booked up this weekend, but I'm available next weekend. Unfortunately for me, saying that earned me the wrath of Karen. Karen, what do you mean booked up? Me, I'm sorry, but I have other people lined up for some cleaning. Karen, I don't care if it's the president or Bill Gates, I need you to clean my car now. Me, sorry ma'am, but I'm first come, first serve on car washing, and for full cleaning I do appointments only. Karen, no, you will clean my car now. At this point I know this conversation was not going anywhere, so I bluntly said no. Karen, what did you say? Me, I said no, I can spell it out for you. No, that's no. Karen starts stuttering, not saying anything coherent. So I said, Me, look, I don't really care who you are, but I was listening to you insult dear, and now you're trying to insult me, and frankly, you can crawl back into whatever hole you crawled out of, because I will not now or ever wash your car. I look at Dee and say, Me, have a good night, Dee. I went back home and was enjoying the blissful peace and quiet. On Saturday, I came in to pick up the next client's vehicle for a wash and found out from Dee that Karen's husband was not too pleased that Karen was insulting the owner and the guy doing the car washing that they packed, and left after only being there for less than a week. I was worried Dee was going to have some strong words with me about what happened, and he told me if anyone tries what Karen pulled refuse and let him know. Dee wasn't going to let this happen and let people get away with this. So now Dee and I are going to let future guests know car cleaning needs to be made by appointment, or head downtown for a car wash. So I'm on this bus, right? Minding my own business, just scrolling through my phone, headphones in, vibing to whatever playlist Spotify thinks suits my mood today. I'm on my way to the train station to visit my mom, and the day's pretty chill so far. Enter Karen. And no, not the... Can I speak to the manager? Karen? But the I just got divorced, and the world owes me something Karen. She storms onto the bus. yapping away on her phone, looking like a thunderstorm in human form. I catch bits and pieces of her conversation, something about alimony, cheating, the whole drama package. So Karen hangs up, glares around the bus, and spots an old dude, maybe pushing 70, chilling in the elderly seat. Now, the bus ain't crowded, so there's plenty of other seats available. But Karen, she's got her sights set on that one. She marches up to the old man, and I can already sense trouble brewing. She demands a seat like she's some kind of queen needing a throne. The old guy, being the gentleman he is, tries to explain that, sorry lady, you're not entitled to the elderly seat just because your love life's in shambles. Now, instead of just finding another seat, Karen goes ballistic. She starts shouting at this poor old man, telling him he's the reason she's stressed and on the verge of a breakdown. The old guy, God bless him, calmly tells her she's not entitled to anything, let alone his seat. And here's where it gets good. The old guy, with a sly grin, goes, no wonder you got divorced with that attitude. Now, I didn't see it coming, but Karen turned into a live wire at that moment. She goes from angry to furious in a split second, winds up her arm, and bam, she straight up punches the old fella in the face. Blood starts gushing from his nose, and the whole bus goes dead silent like a record scratch in a movie. Now, I'm not the type to let things slide. I take my headphones off, stand up, and look Karen dead in the eye. You really just punched a grandpa over a bus seat, I say, not caring that I'm about to unleash a storm of consequences. Mind your own business, sweetheart, Karen spits back. Well, I ain't having that. I whip out my phone, dial 911, and announce to the bus, this entitled lady just punched an old man in the face. We're gonna need the cops here. Karen's eyes widen. She probably thought she could throw a punch and waltz away like nothing happened. But nah, not today. So we wait, me, the old guy, and the rest of the bus, all glaring at Karen like she's some kind of alien who just landed and ruined our day. The cops show up surprisingly fast, and I give them the lowdown, how Karen here thinks she's above the law because her marriage went down the drain. They cuff her, and as they lead her away, she's still screaming about how life's unfair and we're all against her. The bus erupts in applause, and I shoot a little smirk at Karen, like, you reap what you sow, lady. The old guy, who's now got tissue stuck up his nose, pats me on the shoulder. Thanks for stepping in, young lady. Never thought I'd get decked over a bus seat. No problem, Pops, I say, offering him a smile. People like her need a reality check. The bus ride continues, a bit shaken, but mostly back to normal. I find my seat, plug my headphones back in, and try to get back to my Spotify groove. But man, it's hard to shake off the adrenaline from witnessing a Karen meltdown live. As I finally reach the train station, I give the old guy a nod. Take care, Grandpa. Hope the rest of your day is Karen-free. He chuckles, you too, kid. Stay out of trouble. I head off thinking about how some people need a serious reality check. Maybe Karen will learn a lesson from this, or maybe she'll keep storming through life, leaving chaos in her wake. Either way, it's just another day in the city where bus rides turn into unexpected dramas, and you never know when you'll have to stand up, literally, against entitled Karen. Enjoying the stories yet? If you do, please subscribe, like, and comment. Changing names identifying information to protect myself from additional drama. If you like a good effed around and found out, you'll love this story. The cast of characters are Dad, Uncle, and Granddad. A few years ago, Granddad died in a rehab facility as a result of gross negligence. Dad and Uncle open a lawsuit on behalf of Granddad's estate. It drags on and looks like it's going nowhere. 2 years ago, Dad died a couple of months after a cancer diagnosis. It was sudden, and Uncle had promised him his kids were now his. He'd look out for us. I was the executor of Dad's estate and did the usual business of selling property, closing accounts, etc. Since Uncle was the executor of Granddad's estate, I asked him if it was still open and what the lawsuit status was. Uncle said the lawsuit went nowhere and the estate was closed. This is where I made a mistake. I took him at his word. Dad's estate was settled and closed last winter. My siblings and I split everything according to the will, and life continued. In April, Uncle called me to tell me he wanted to gift my siblings and me a small amount of money. The lawsuit on behalf of Granddad was paying out, and Uncle wanted to give us $10,000 to split. Then he told me Dad's estate needed to be reopened to claim it. There were so many red flags you would think the circus was in town. I played nice, thanked him, and immediately called the courthouse where Granddad and Dad's estates were established. The clerk told me not only was Granddad's estate still open, but there was also a large bond on a sum of money recently placed. Did I want the name of the lawyer on file? Yes, I did. I called the lawyer, and the receptionist exclaimed that they were trying to find my contact info. The lawyer gets on the line, and as one of the beneficiaries, he's able to fill me in on everything. Right after Dad was diagnosed, the lawsuit for Granddad was settled. Dad died without knowing the rehab admitted their part in causing his father's death and paid out a settlement. The money sat in limbo for 18 months, through the funeral and the sale of properties. The first business day after Dad's estate closed, Uncle petitioned for the release of funds as the sole beneficiary. The estate lawyer discovered Uncle wasn't the sole beneficiary and requested my contact info, which Uncle claimed he did not have. The lawyer tells him that my siblings and I were still his beneficiaries even though Dad's estate closed. We were entitled to Dad's share. This is when Uncle called me with this tale of wanting to gift us a small amount. The total sum of the lawsuit after taxes and the lawyer's fees was around $150. Since Dad and Uncle were the sole beneficiaries of Granddad's estate, they would each get half. Guys, I was furious. I called the siblings, and we agreed to play it cool. The lawyer for Granddad's estate knew Uncle was being shady and never intended to split the money, so he refused to release the funds to Granddad's estate. The checks would go to Uncle and Dad's estate directly. I decided to bide my time with Uncle and not reveal the extent of what I knew. 2 more months go by. The estate is reopened and the bank account is established. This is when Uncle finds out through the lawyer that the funds would not be given to Uncle to disperse but would go directly to the beneficiaries. Uncle calls me spitting mad, saying he did all the legwork of getting the lawsuit done and deserved payment. He felt giving us $10K was fair. I told him the courts had a system for that sort of thing, and he would get his hours time through the lawyer. Uncle went into a rant that Dad owed him money, and that Uncle would bill us for so many hours we would get less than $10K if we didn't agree to the 10. I told him to try. Uncle did try. Granddad's estate lawyer wouldn't say how many versions of the application he rejected before they arrived at an acceptable rate the judge would agree to. Uncle wanted us to pay for a grave plot since Dad died first and took the last plot in the family graveyard. He wanted repayment for all sorts of things that had nothing to do with Granddad's estate. The poor estate lawyer had to try to beat estate laws and inheritance into Uncle's head, but Uncle was determined to take both his share and Dad's. I'm the executor, and they don't deserve a thing. My siblings and I accepted the first reasonable rate and walked away with half of the remaining balance. Uncle never realized the sum would come off the top, not deducted from Dad's share alone. Despite the paper trail of deception he left, he still feels he's the victim and we stole from him. The saddest thing about betrayal is that it never comes from your enemies. It comes from friends and loved ones. Since I was younger, I have always noticed a difference in my father's family's treatment of me. I was the unplanned daughter in the middle of a divorce, while my older brother was expected and looked forward to by the family from an early age. At first, I didn't notice this difference. I just thought it was in my head or that I was exaggerating, so I never paid much attention. For example, at parties, my family only liked me to go when my brother went. On commemorative dates, my brother got video games, remote control cars, or anything he asked for, while I received those little mirrors for $1.99 or a notebook for 5 materials with a random princess. I often cried and felt excluded, but the family said it was drama and there was no favoritism. The person who affected me the most was my paternal grandmother. Her life revolved around my brother. So let's get straight to the point, what made me realize this. In January 2020, when I was 15 years old, my father came to spend the holidays in Sao Paulo. He is from Minas Gerais. And he came up with the brilliant idea of spending time at my grandparents' farm. I was happy because he loved the farm. We went to my grandparents' house first so we could go to the farm early the next day. My brother didn't want to go because, according to him, there was going to be an event on Star Tower Defense on Roblox, and he couldn't miss it, so it was just me. When I arrived at her house, instead of greeting me, the first thing she said was, "Where's your brother?" Didn't he come? And I replied that he preferred to play, and she just shrugged and went to greet my father. During the day, she didn't stop commenting on how much she wanted her grandson to be here with her, but I ignored it because it could just be missed, right? We went early the next day. Before arriving at my grandparents' farm, we passed by the neighbor's farm, with whom I had a lot of friendship and affection, as I spent a lot of time with her, but when I looked inside, I saw that she had brought her grandchildren, and they are almost everyone my age. I was excited, and when we arrived at the place and unloaded our suitcase, the first thing I did was greet her grandchildren, who were childhood friends from that place, especially a specific friend. We read and talked about anime and manga. I asked my father if I could play with them, and he agreed. I spent the whole day there playing and having fun. When I returned, my grandmother was quiet, so my aunt came over to talk, saying that my grandmother was sad that I stopped staying with her to spend the day with a neighbor and her grandchildren, since she was my grandmother, and I agreed with her and said that the next day I would spend the day with her and that she shouldn't worry. The next day, while my grandmother was making lunch, I was eating snacks with my cousins and talking to my aunt. My father and grandfather were away because my father had gotten sick and had food poisoning, so there were only the two of us left. While we were eating, my little cousin asked if he could go play with the neighbor's children. And my grandmother, who was cooking, butted in and said, "No, you can't," and my cousin asked why, receiving the answer, "Don't be disobedient like certain people and go to other people's houses." I looked at her and said, "Was that a hint?" And she replied, "Yes, it was. If your brother was here, it would be much better. He wouldn't be being as disobedient as you. He could have come instead of you and I exploded if he really cared. I wouldn't have preferred to play video games instead of coming to see you. And since I'm disobedient, I'm really going to be. I was going to spend the day with you, but since I'm not welcome, I'm leaving." I got up and ran to the neighbor. I met my friend and started crying. I stayed there until nightfall, and it was time to go home. I had called my mother and told her everything. She was furious and said she was going to talk to my father, but she asked me to go back to my grandparents' place and just ignore my grandmother since everyone was gone except my grandmother. I did what she said and came back in silence and went to lie down on the bed. When I was lying down, my grandmother sat on the sofa and was in the next room. There were no doors, so I could hear everything that was happening and see it too. She had sat down in front of the TV, and without looking at me, just standing still, she started to say, "Your father called me and told me that you called your mother. You always do that. You are just like your mother. It's horrible. Your brother should have come instead of you. You're not even your father's daughter." And he continued talking all night. I couldn't hear anymore because of the crying, and I slept in tears. The next day, when my father was at home, she was acting as if nothing had happened and came to talk to me normally. But I hadn't forgotten, and since we returned to the house, I didn't say anything to her, and not for a while after, until my birthday arrived in October, and she sent one to me from my brother, asking him to give it to me. When he said she gave me a gift, I gave it back to him and asked to give it back, because I didn't want anything to do with her anymore. He was pissed off and didn't want to talk to me. And my family was upset too and didn't want to know what happened. And I told them what had happened, but they said that my grandmother had already told me everything, saying that I was super rude and that I had responded to everyone and that after scolding me, I didn't like it and ran to the neighbor after telling my grandfather to go to that place. I cut ties with all of them and told myself that I would no longer accept people who harmed me in my life. But my father thinks I should apologize just to end this crappy atmosphere. Maybe I was the wrong one? I was working for a medium-sized video game company. We'll call it medium. Though we had our own management and building in another state, we were wholly owned by a gigantic software company. We'll call it Jumbo. They did lots of things besides games, but our job was to create million-seller games, and their job was to publish them. All was well. Part of the nature of the relationship was that Jumbo couldn't directly manage or micromanage medium personnel, though they could offer or deny perks. In the fall of 2006, I was the lead designer for a highly anticipated game expansion. One day, my producer came to me and said, "Jumbo just realized we are attending a big game festival in Barcelona, Spain, and they hadn't planned to send anyone from Medium, but they want to show off your new game expansion. Everyone is super busy and doesn't want to go. They know they can't force us, so they have said that if you will agree to go, you can either fly first, class, or bring your wife." That's a no-brainer. My wife speaks fluent Spanish and would doubtless love to visit Barcelona. First class is for suckers. So I said, "Bring my wife and I'm in." I told my wife, and she was excited for the trip. Then just 3 days before the trip, my producer came back and said, "Sorry, Sandy. The bean counter says that your wife can't go because it's too expensive." They reneged on the offer. So apparently to save $1,000, they backstabbed me. Great. I didn't shoot the messenger, though. I just said, Hey, no problem. And they can save even more money now because I won't go either. Let them know. I went back to work. My producer grinned. A good guy. Apparently what had happened is a jumbo bean counter had decided all on his own that a trip to Barcelona was a good enough perk and I didn't need any other encouragement, because of course I would be willing to go. What wouldn't? My producer told me the bean counter was aghast when I said no. Also, the rest of my team heard about them jerking me around, so when they were asked if they wanted to go in my stead, 100% of them said no. I did not ask them to do this. They were just loyal. One day later, my producer returned. Jumbo has agreed to bring your wife. It cost them an extra $4,000 for the tickets because they're ordering late. Good on them. So their plan to save $1,000 cost them $3,000 extra, which I know their accounting department hates. In case you're wondering why I wasn't excited enough to go to Barcelona all by myself, it's because I knew what would be happening there. And it did. I spent all day long, every day, in a large, windowless room full of computers and computer geeks showing off my game. I didn't really get to see Barcelona all that much. It was a convention, not a vacation. I guess Jumbo's bean counter had never been to a convention and thought it would be all-day parties instead of tech demos, meetings with buyers, setting up hardware, and then sleeping like the dead when we got back to the hotel. But the good news is my wife got to gallivant around Barcelona all day every day and had a ball. Also, we did manage to get together for dinner most evenings, so we had tapas and squid ink paella and stuff like that. A definite success. Many years ago, in a land a few blocks away, I loved to ride my bicycle. Single mother, no car. It was nothing really special, but it got me all over town. I mostly kept on sidewalks because traffic can be filled with too many entitled drivers. I got to a corner and saw a car coming up the side street to the stop sign. The driver slowed way down, so I assumed he would stop where he was supposed to. He didn't, my bad, because I'd already started to ride my bike off the curb into the street in front of him. You guessed it, we crashed. I squirmed my way from under the rest of my bike and the car and started checking myself for injury. Just a bruised knee, so I was very lucky. The driver got out of his car and yelled at me for being in his way, didn't ask if I were okay, and I yelled at him for running a stop sign. A passerby checked on me and called the police. While I was safely back on the sidewalk with the passerby, the driver pulled his car about 5-6 feet forward, dragging my bike. I think he knew he was in trouble, so he altered the accident site to look like he was already around the corner, because when the police came, that's what he told them. He said he stopped, proceeded around the corner, and I just barreled out into his path. The police officer asked for my story, and I asked him to ask the driver to back his car up a bit, and I showed the officer exactly where we both were at the time of the accident. He was wondering how I could be so positive, but then, once the driver moved his car, I pointed to the scrapes in the street that my bike had made when I was hit. The driver got the ticket, and I got information. I wrote several letters to him, asking him to replace my bike, but he ignored them. I finally had to take him to small claims court to be compensated for my squished bike. He didn't show up. The judge reviewed all my evidence and awarded me the cost of a new bike plus pain and suffering for my bruised knee. The court served him those papers, but he ignored them too. Now, I'm frustrated. No money, no bike. And the real entitlement begins. I found another second-hand bike and started riding around again. I decided to pedal by the driver's house just because I'm curious and there's a for sale sign on his lawn. So he's trying to move and make a getaway just to avoid paying me. I went home, gathered all my paperwork regarding the judgment, and headed to the courthouse. There, I filed a lion against his house for the judgment amount. Then I called his realtor and informed her of the judgment and lion. She called the driver. Now, 6 months or so after the accident, I finally hear from the driver. He called and threatened me over the phone, telling me he had witnesses who could prove I was wrong about how the accident happened. I informed him that the time to have brought those witnesses was at the court date, which he missed. He told me that I'd better take the lion off the house. I refused. He tried to tell me he could sell it, and he would pay me. I told him that's not the way it works. Pay me, and I'd take the lion off. He growled something and hung up on me. 2 months later, I get a call from the realtor who wants to stop by and drop off a check. I signed the lion release and got a cashier's check, and my kids had great Christmas Edit. For all those who are wondering, his actual ticket was for not having insurance, not for hitting a pedestrian in a crosswalk. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more captivating stories. Share your own experiences, opinions in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay tuned for more epic tales.